I'm Mark Turner, president of the Gilroy Chamber of Commerce, and we are continuing our series, our Legislative Summit series. Since we're unable to meet in person, we have been blessed to have the opportunity to have many of our elected officials join us in these Zoom meetings, allowing us to have the conversation that we would have normally had in our Legislative Summit setting. So today, we have with us Senator Bill Monning, who represents the 17th Senate District of California. And we're honored to have him here with us. Senator, thank you for joining us and being a part of our conversation this morning.
Well, thank you, Mark, and good morning, good day to all the viewers and chamber members. I just want to thank you and the chamber for providing this opportunity, maintaining this important connective tissue, particularly during the time of this crisis. So thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Again, thank you for joining us. We'll go ahead and jump into the questions and get started in our discussion this morning. Senator, Governor Newsom's consideration of an executive order creating a conclusive presumption of work-relatedness for all employees deemed essential during the COVID-19 crisis obviously has our chamber concerned, other chambers. I'm a member of the Silicon Valley Coalition of Chambers, and we're all somewhat opposed to what we believe to be that executive order. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, I am familiar with it, and I appreciate your raising it. My understanding is that it is an order being considered. It has not yet been advanced. I know the governor is receiving feedback from around the state. As we know, the workers' comp system is based on a no-fault presumption for an injury that is work-related. And of course, the challenge with COVID-19 is not being able to determine in all cases with accuracy the point of contact or the point of contraction of the infection. And that's what, of course, makes it troubling for employers to shoulder the fault through their insurance carriers for any and all diagnosed COVID-19 cases. I do think it's an important springboard to both advance the concern, but also to look to how the state can partner with employers when an employee is diagnosed to make sure there's community support, medical support for appropriate isolation and quarantine to protect other employees and members of that workforce. So a little bit unrelated to your immediate question, but I think related in the larger scope of the public health response that does include workplaces.
Well, thank you for that. Do you have a sense on where the governor may be going with that executive order? I know he's gathering information. I'm sure getting a lot of feedback from business organizations. Do you get a sense on where he might go? I think one of the major concerns there, and one of the points that we're familiar with, is that it allows a doctor of any kind to treat the employees through workers' comp system. This could be chiropractors, orthopedists, podiatrists, who could declare a patient to have COVID-19 without any testing being done. So from an employer's perspective, that is a great concern and certainly great potential for abuse.
Well, I certainly, from that framing, there certainly should be tightening up. I cannot predict, as you know, what the governor's thinking will be or will go. I can say that we do in our Senate leadership have regular contact with the governor's office, including all the agency directors, and so we can include these concerns. I would think at a minimum, there would have to be a positive test shown before there could be a conclusion that the COVID virus was what, in fact, afflicted any worker or any patient for that matter.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that. Our next question, the governor wants to train 10,000 contact tracers. What is this exactly and how would this work? The second question to that is there a cost and who would pick up the tab for those tracers?
Well, again, I think this is being formulated. It's absolutely critical as part of our, if you look at the governor's 6 pillars to returning our economy to normal, or at least to start return to normal, the first pillar is the importance of continued testing, expanded testing, and from a public health point of view, what's called surveillance, the ability to get data both COVID infection testing and also potentially antibody testing. You do need a huge force of workers to do it. The projected number of 10,000 could in fact be a starting point. My sense is that it will be, my understanding is that it would be coordinated through county public health officers in coordination with the California Department of Public Health. And I would think that there would certainly have to be state funding to support those activities statewide.
Well, much like other communities, I should say, and our local business community is being devastated by the shelter-in-place order, which is now going into its 7th week. It now appears that we are going to be facing another 4 weeks, and quite frankly, we have to get back to work. Livelihoods are being destroyed, businesses are going bankrupt, and of course, local municipalities are losing millions and millions of dollars. Now, without being disrespectful or insensitive to others who have lost loved ones, due to the coronavirus, at what point will the governor lift this shelter-in-place order?
Well, I think the governor has set forth the 6 criteria that he will follow. He will be, in his daily press updates, make that information more available. I do want to make sure, Mark, people know of the new website of the state, update.covid19.ca.gov. That is daily updated. It does show Santa Clara County with now over 100 deaths, over 2,000 positive cases, and that's with less than expansive testing, I would submit. Throughout my district, throughout the 17th Senate District, the leading employers are agriculture and hospitality tourism. The hospitality tourism industry has been absolutely devastated, going overnight from many businesses closing, many employees who live paycheck to paycheck, hourly wage workers without jobs. A couple of things we've done is on the unemployment insurance front. The state of California since March 15th has pushed out $3.5 billion in support with a 3-week turnaround from online application to check to laid off employees. The Small Business Administration has been the first line of support for small businesses from the federal government. We can talk about that more later. I think the most important for me to communicate, the most important issue with this great need and desire to get back to work is that we need to follow the lead of the public health experts and doctors. There's a tremendous interest in some political leaders and business leaders to get back to work. I point people to the history of the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. It took 50 million lives globally. World War I took 16 million lives in war casualties, 16 million versus 50 million who perished in that virus. In the United States, more died in the second wave because they were anxious to get back to business as normal. If we rush it, if we don't follow the best advice of our medical community, we will exacerbate the damage, we will exacerbate and increase the number of deaths, and indeed, it will be more paralyzing to business in the long run. So I think the governor is committed to starting to relax, but one of his points is if we start to move back, we also have to keep testing and be able to pull back if we get ahead of ourselves. So I think the public health concern, the over 1,000 deaths in California, close to 2,000 deaths now, over 100 in Santa Clara County. This virus is real. It is not yet contained. Our sheltering in place has gotten us to a point where we think we're hitting peaks in certain communities. I remind listeners, a peak is not the end. A peak is the halfway point. It means as many will be infected and die after the peak as before the peak. And the reason that we can look towards a downturn in numbers is because people have abided by the shelter in place. It is the most effective public health response to an epidemic, to this pandemic. Again, the governor is keenly aware The legislature is keenly aware of the lost business opportunities. Many businesses looking at this as possibly a death knell to their small business. We've got to stick together, and later I can share some of the support mechanisms that are in place.
Thank you, Senator. That'll be important because I think it's fair to say, and I think you would agree, that since 1918, we have certainly learned a lot of different ways of containing a type of virus or a pandemic by taking certain actions, whether it's sheltering in place, wearing masks, doing things that allow us still to have some interaction from a business perspective that might allow our local businesses to be able to survive. I mean, if we were to take this out another month or two, I have a feeling we would begin to see total devastation in our business community, bankruptcies like we've never seen before. So hopefully we'll be able to manage this in such a way that we can begin to ease these restrictions and get people back to work.
Yeah, and again, that is a shared concern, and I appreciate the Chamber's position on this. And again, as you alluded in your question, we should have perhaps led with our empathy and sympathy to those who have lost loved ones, to those right now, today, who are struggling with loved ones, many on life support, as we struggle to save those lives and to prevent others from being infected. This is a deadly pandemic, and our best defense has been the shelter in place. We will see some relaxation. I urge people to follow the governor's lead. He's following the best advice both in the state, nationally, and internationally.
Thank you, Senator. That's a good reminder. That ends our first session for this morning, and I appreciate you being with us. Hang tight. We'll be back in just a few seconds.